What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Gundam Card Game video. Today I have before you guys a updated version of the purple green CB deck. Now what spurred this on was actually I've been active on the Facebook group for the community for Gundam, and I've been noticing a lot more people getting into the game, which made me think about a lot of people were asking questions how to get into the game and things that they don't know, like resources that they have for free they can look into. So we're planning to do a video on just when you first get into the game, and it'll be a really good time to do it since an anniversary set is coming out very soon, within maybe 2 months of this video. On top of that, a lot of people's first starter deck is the Celestial Being deck, which is actually really solid. It's purple and green, so we figured why not take that deck, see if we can make some changes to see if we can make it a little bit more competitive and a little bit more fun at the same time while you're playing it, not just have a plain starter deck. So let's get into it. Let's see if we can make this deck a little bit better. All right, so now let's get into the deck profile for you guys. Now, again, I wanted to just kind of like take the starter deck and just make minor tweaks to it so we can make it a little bit more competitive. I still think my playstyle is purple red CB until we get more cards. I feel like that is the best CB deck. There is green red at times that is really good. It depends on how you play it. We have made changes to both our decks, but I wanted to try to get the green and purple CBs and see how we can do with it. You will see some weird text in here. The tech cards that we're using I found have been very interesting and helpful, and I will explain my ratios. I will leave a link down below, or a text down below, of everything for this deck list that I have on EX Burst. You're going to see some changes, but let me explain what we have in this deck. So first thing first, you got to start off with the low level unit. We run 4 of the Zero Gundams. With the Zero Gundams, it's a 2-1. I like to go second with this deck specifically. It's not my personal playstyle to go second. I tend to like to go first. But with this, you kind of want to make sure you go second. The curve is a little bit more better when you go second, when you go with your units. Obviously, if you go second, this is your first unit you're dropping off. Good to have a unit out in the field. And then as we continue to go through the deck list, you're going to see how like certain cards are a little bit more towards a certain curve. You'll see how I'm going. So next will be the Gundam Virtues. This is the blocker. Overall, just really good card. Obviously, if you have a CB pilot out in play, it becomes a blocker. Interesting stat line, 3-3. That's all pretty much when it comes to it. Next, 2 new ones from GDO 4 is Gundam Dynamis GN Full Shield. This is my turn 3 potential play if I have it. What I try to do is I try to drop just on turn 3, so that I don't leave the blocker, and then hopefully I have either the pilot or something out so I can go ahead and drop it next turn. So depending on what I have as my link, my turn 3 plays depends on what I have here specifically. This can obviously be really good because, like I said, if you put the pilot out in play, let's just say you put it on Virtue, this can eat up a gym, a 2-2, and only take 1 damage. And now they need a 3 AP attack unit to go ahead and take this out, or ping it multiple times and then take out another unit. So this is really good as long as you have a CB pilot in play. What you end up doing is taking 1 less damage per turn. So your turn and your opponent's turn, which is also very interesting, that they don't really see coming sometimes. So we have that. We also run the normal Dynamis as well. There's times where I need that 3 AP to either crack a base or just have overall something to be really strong. I could put Cessna on this. Now it can, when on attack, can be a 6 on attack, which can take out a base. Obviously not, you can't link it and rush, but you can on the next turn drop it, and then you can go ahead and crack a 6 HP base, which can be very helpful as well. So this is technically where my 3-2s are technically at right now. Like I said, turn 1, if I'm going second, perfect. Turn 3, I'm probably most likely dropping one of these. Unless I have a link for, if I have a link for Arde, I'll wait for Arde to turn 4 and then drop these turn 3, or vice versa, depending on what I want to do specifically. But I tend to wait for the blocker until after turn 4 so that it doesn't get pinged out or anything like that. At least these units would get pinged out versus the blocker, which seems to be a little bit more important when you're dealing out with your opponent. Now, something that might be an actual shocker is I'm only running 3 of the Dynamis LR. The reason for the 3 is actually because more mid to late game, if you have LR Dynamis, it isn't really that great. Against aggro is pretty decent. If you can take out a 2-2 gym, awesome. But more to mid to late game, if you don't have lock on with the Dynamis, it really doesn't help you very well. It's an okay unit. It does have 4 HP, so it can last a little bit. But overall, not a huge fan when it comes to it. If I don't have that pilot, but if you put Cessna on this, Cessna on attack will allow it to be a 5/5, which again, you can repair. You don't need a link for that. The AP +2 is from the when lock on is on, so technically you could put Cessna on there, but I don't really care for it to be at 4 and have it more towards mid to late game and not have a really good unit to really use when I need to. So I cut it down to 3, and I found it actually pretty decent with that, not running at 4 where it can get very cloggy. Next, I am running 3 of the GN Armor Type E's. These are really great. I might bump it to 4. I think even in my deck right now, in my EX Burst deck for this, I think I have it at 3. I think it's really solid. It's a linkable unit with Cessna if you need to link it. On top of it, it will pop a lot of tokens. When it comes to popping tokens, it's really solid. It can pop gun tank, it can pop Zaku 2s that bumps up to, you know, the 3 AP unit. All the tokens, striker pack, Corsica, tall geese with the Leos, the hands, the head, the pants, all that gonna get popped. So overall, really solid unit. It's probably something that I might want to look into bumping into 4 if I could potentially, you know, cut something out. But there are more cards you're going to see that are a little bit more interesting. But early on, if I'm going against aggro, I'm hoping that this can hold me down, plus the base, obviously. So we have that. Then moving forward, I have only 2 of the Breach Dynamis. I found that the Breacher is decent. If you put it to 1, honestly, it's like you can just cut it out. But it is good by itself. It is a 5/3, so it allows me on turn 5. If I already burned my EX, if I'm going second, I can at least drop another unit. If I'm going second, I have yet to burn my EX. I could put this in lock on and still have 1 resource remaining to use, which is really nice if I need to use it. So just thinking about how the turn 2 plays would be if you're going second, that could be very helpful as well. Next, I am only running 3 of the LR Exias. This card is just there for the drawing and the milling. You can put any pilot on there. It mills 2, if it's a CB, draw 1. Awesome. It's really there just to get either the resource 1 or that draw off. Besides that, it is a decent stat. It's a body you can put on the field if you need to, and that's what I tend to do with it. Overall, this is a really good card. Sometimes I do link it, sometimes I don't link it, sometimes I'll put it for another pilot like Arte or something like that, and then go ahead and go in. But overall, decent card. Like I said, if you're going second, when you would have that chance to drop, you will burn your EX resource to make this work. If you go second and you just drop this, then you can just leave this unit on the field without putting the pilot and keep that EX resource for the next turn. But overall, it can be super solid for you set up next turn as well. All right, next, something that I will try to probably increase as we continue to go forward is probably GN Armor Type E. This card is just too good of a card. If you can keep getting consistently to the end game, this card is super solid. It is a blocker and is a generic CB link, so you can put that with any pilot rush if you need to, and I find that has been very, very helpful. Card that I have at 4 in my current purple red deck, and this card I might look into putting at 3 if I can keep consistently making sure I'm getting to end game. This card can be really good. Can't drop wing 0 and affect it, which is nice. Overall, I just think that this card is a really solid card to put in the deck, and I feel why not? You have some blockers. This is just an overall generic good card to put down. Now that card helps you line up, and if you need to, use it to protect your 3 Transam that I currently have in my deck. 3 Transams are your main boss units. You're going to try to suppress and then pop, get all the CB cards in your grave. Awesome, get the effect off, pop. Now, while I was trying to look at this deck and figure out what is the biggest issue when it comes to Transam, this is with any color combination. The issue with Transam is you are going to go against a blocker deck. And if you go against a blocker deck, if you can't bait out the block, unfortunately, when you drop this when you need to, and it doesn't really help because they can go ahead and block this off. Now, what's really good about this is I kept thinking, how do I get around blockers? How do I get around blockers? Now, there are a couple ways to get around blockers. One, you can drop a bunch of command cards. You can do, Fatal Strike, Giant Killing can be a solid unit, solid card you can put in here. Then I started thinking, what else can I put in this that can be, very troublesome? And this is when I decided to actually put in the deck 2 Ultron units. Now, in my EX burst, I've actually at times not even seen it at 2, and I've actually increased it to 3. Now, there's times where I wanted back to 2. There was one time I played and I actually drew 2 in my mulligan hand, which was crazy. But this is a really solid card. If you can wait one more turn and before attacking, so you have this out, you threaten it, they're gonna be like, oh, I gotta put a bunch of blockers out. All right, don't attack, drop this. I don't run Cheng Wu Fei, but next turn, when I swing, they haven't gotten rid of anything. When I swing, I'm going to start popping your blockers. And this can really change a lot of the tempo when it comes to it. If they're running high-end, bigger units, this is going to get rid of everything besides 2 blockers that I know of. Silver Bullets and also Freedom Gundam. Everything else is going to get popped when it comes to this actual card. And I figure, why not use it? You can, like I said, run other cards instead. But I found that this was a better solution. You can drop these 2 cards, or 3, because I run 3 in my EX burst. You can drop these and put Giant Killings if you wanted to go ahead and get rid of. But with this, I feel like this is a really solid card, because you also get the breach. On top of that, it has 6 HP, which means that even if you go against, Gundam Armor Array, it can't rest it, which is really nice. So having this body on the field and just using it to pop their blockers is also really, really solid. This can make it a little tough for them. And then this kind of paves the way for your Trans Am to then go ahead and hit. Like I said, sometimes I'd like to threaten Trans Am and drop the Trans Am out, and it just stays out in the field until I'm ready to go ahead and, do this. If I can't bait out the blocker, then I will just have the body out, use Ultron to go ahead and start popping up their blockers, and then just pave the way for Trans Am to go ahead and smack. But I think, like I said, on my EX burst, I'll post a picture of it or something, or like I said in the description. I think I have this at 3 because I was playing it and I was not receiving the tech card I wanted to, and I kind of want to see it. At 1, you just never ever see it. At 2, there's a chance for you to see it, and I kind of like it at 2. You can run it at 3. There's times where I did run it at 3, and I saw it when I want to see it, so that you can play it however you want. But I think overall, to deal with the issue that Trans Am has to not be blocked, you're gonna have to use cards like I said, Fatal Strike, Giant Killing, or even just putting Ultron in a deck if you wanted to. I thought about putting Shenlong, but honestly, with that, it just changes the deck overall. It could be possible if you wanted to. It can work. But I just find, like, if you just leave this towards the end game, they don't see this coming, and now you're dealing with a lot of their blockers. So that's what I have to say to that when it comes to that. Next, pilots, 4 Cessnas, really solid card. People forget that as long as there's 7 in the grave, every single CB gains +1 AP. So a lot of times they don't see that coming. You could put this, like I said, on a full shield. It becomes a 5 on attack AP because doing his attack. And if you have 7 in the grave, then all your units gain +1, which makes a lot of the other units can be very strong. Can buff up your Zero Gundam, can buff up your Dynamis, your normal Dynamis, or your Breacher, or whatever. You can make them really, really strong when it comes to it. Again, obviously links with all the Exias, the Gundams, and all that can make plays. Overall, when you have the 7 in the grave, that's when I'm not shy with dropping Cessna, because then Cessna becomes extremely important to buff all my units to make uneven trades for my opponent. And next, and this is what I actually cut out. I'm running 4 of the lock-ons. Lock-on I find at times very, very helpful when it comes to, making a unit attack an active unit if you need to. If they're keeping units up alive, you can go ahead and do that. You can try to, hit 7s and lower and have no issue, because it needs to be a CB unit to gain this effect. But it can be very, very helpful. Obviously, you have a lot of Dynamis lock-on links. You can go ahead and do it. But I actually, in my deck list, I ended up actually cutting this down to 3 and putting Ultron at 3. And that's what I ended up cutting, because, again, This is really meant really for this, and then you can get some lock-on plays, but besides that, there's no other reason that lock-on is actually really solid. It's mostly meant for those plays specifically. After that, lock-on is just good for GN armor types, and that's pretty much it. Cut this at 3 and put Ultron. It depends on how you want to play, but that's kind of how I have it in my EX burst. But you can just have more pilots just to be a little bit more consistent. And then last but not least, we have 2 Ardays. Arday is really solid. I even have it at 2. I still see it sometimes when I need it too. If my play on opening hand is dropping 0 Gundam, then dropping full shield, next turn drop Virtue and Arday, I have burned 3 of the resources, but still not burned that 4th one, which is also really solid, which is where my curve starts to go at, like I mentioned. If I decide to go more that direction, it just makes it easier to keep that 1 EX resource always live when I need it, so that I can use it more towards the mid to late game when I need it. So if I get my opening hand that way, it tends to be decent, and it's all about being consistent on how to do it. But like I said, even if you don't, if you just say, let's just run it the opposite way, right? You have 0 Gundam, then you have lock on, Virtue, and full shield, and you could do the other way around if you really wanted to. You can put the Virtue out first, and then the full shield gains its effect. So you can do however you want, but that is what I tend to do, and I find it very interesting, especially when on that turn 4, when you don't want to burn that EX resource, to be able to just have that 3 resources being used and tapped and still go in. So that is it when it comes to the pilots. Now when it comes to the commands, we are using 2 of the arm intervention. Really solid card. This card is just amazing. They don't see it sometimes coming. A lot of times when you're going against aggro players, I tend to not attack their units because it always leaves me maybe 1 or 2 HP, and I have 1 ping left or 2 ping left before I'm dead, and then they go ahead and ping me out. I tend to always, if I have arm intervention, I tend to always swing for the shield, the base area, so that my body of my unit is full, and then when they go and swing, then I use arm intervention, and it makes uneven trades. Or vice versa, if he is pinged out, and they have, maybe I have 1 ping left and they didn't ping it out, they swing, I use arm intervention, obviously ping out the, target the one that's almost dead. So arm intervention, super solid. And if not, if you hit it in your burst, it's a draw 1. So why not? Next is damage control. I run 2 damage controls. I think in the EX burst, I think sometimes I run this at 3 sometimes. Really solid, can make uneven trades. They think, okay, I'm going to go ahead and smack that and be fine. You drop damage control. Okay, now I'll either have to do 2 units into that same unit that I want to take out, or maybe I just leave the board alone and then come back next time. So damage control can be very interesting. Obviously, the burst is actually very weird and interesting because it's minus 2 AP on burst, which if you're going against aggro, is actually not that bad. If they have like a 2-2 out on the field, you can minus that 2-2 and they can't swing. So that can play a factor into it. But overall, it's okay. You use this most, like I said, these cards for making those trades that you don't want them to make, and kind of making those uneven trades or keeping your unit up alive that you want to make sure you have them up. And then last but not least, we have the bases. Obviously, we are running 4 of the Ptolemios. With the Ptolemy, I love it. I love it at 4. It's a great card. This is what's going to slow down a lot of the aggro players. Being able to drop this and have your units rested makes it really tough for the aggro players to deal with. Wish this card was sometimes a level 4 or lower, but hopefully we get a better CB base when it comes to it. Because 3 is honestly nothing when you go against aggro. They drop, Anxias, they drop Adepts, they drop Gundam. This doesn't do nothing. But if you had a level 4 or lower, like the Zeong has, then you are a little bit better situation. Now, I also run 1 more card, and I'm running Underground Base currently. This is another, just a really strong base, some way to keep me up alive a little bit longer. When it comes to aggro, I have another base that they have to deal with. This base can be annoying. If they have a bunch of little weenies, they're going to have to turn them all sideways to break the base, or they need the right cards. And hopefully when they get the right card, I can deal with what is on the field. So I'll end up liking how it is currently set up. But like I said, when it comes to the actual deck, this is just a blueprint of how I currently have it. I tweaked, some of the cards, the ratios a little bit. I cut the, lock on sometimes. I put the other Ultron. It all depends on your playstyle, but I've noticed, like I said, you can cut the Ultrons out and you can put like giant killings and stuff like that, but I found it extremely strong to have Ultron sometimes to be able to just constantly deal a 5 damage, and if they don't get rid of it soon, then you know they're making some uneven trades because they think they have a wall of blockers. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start hitting multiple units. Maybe I hit one blocker with Ultron and then pop another blocker with this effect. Now you're gonna start clearing out the board when it comes to that, and a lot of times they don't see this coming. I think overall, I think this is my solution for right now for Trans Am in the purple green. When you need to get that effect going off and they have blockers, then you can go ahead and use that. And if they don't have blockers, this is still a really solid unit because it can still breach, and you could put this with any other pilot if you needed to give it just a stat boost. You won't get the effects of the pilots, but overall, I think just giving those extra stats can be also really good as well when it comes to your deck. And this is pretty much it. This is my updated version of the green and purple CB deck. Like I said, I've been playing with a few of my friends on MSA and I found this deck very, very interesting. While I was testing it out, like I said, minus a few ratios, I feel like this deck is pretty solid. I still personally like purple red as my favorite deck right now when it comes to CB, just more of my playstyle. But I wanted to actually, you know, like I said, go back into I think ST07 and see if we can make some tweaks. As a beginner player, can you make the ST07 deck a little bit better? You might need some cards like the Trans Ams. Ultron is up to you if you really want to do that, but that's just the way I see it. Other cards are not in there. Most of them are commons. You have commons, uncommons. A lot of these cards, uncommons, these are all cards that you can potentially, you know, get from, you know, from bulk from your local store or from other people that could be pretty fairly cheap. The only thing else I can think of is damage control, which I think is a solid card you might want to put in the deck just to be able to have a really strong command to hold it down when you need to. But that is pretty much it, guys. Comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.